Hello. We are today in a new series. What does it mean to walk courageously? Our theme today is understanding that courage is not about fearlessness. It's about choosing faith and purpose, even when it feels uncertain. Welcome to Live Courageous podcast, where we explore faith, leadership, healing, and courage it takes to become who God has created you to be. I'm your host, Musudeen. And each week, we have honest conversations about life, growth, walking by faith, even when the path isn't clear. Whether you're navigating change, searching for purpose, or learning to trust God in a new season. This space here is to encourage you, challenge you, to remind you that courage is something that we build on every day. So take a deep breath, settle in. Let's step into today's conversation. We welcome our listeners here. I have a guest, Nadine Tonsil.
Hello.
And she does have a doctorate in counseling. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's great to be here today.
Yes. So today's title is Walking Courageously. So people often think courage means having no fear. But real courage often appears in everyday moments when we choose faith, growth, and obedience despite uncertainty. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to keep moving. So Nadine,
Yes.
when you hear the phrase walking courageously, what does that mean to you?
Well, like you said, it does not mean the absence of fear. Mm-hmm. To me, it means being bold and being brave. And it makes me think of the story of Esther in the Bible. Mm-hmm. You know, Esther, she went before the king and risked her whole life to save her whole nation. Mm-hmm. So even though she was afraid, she went ahead and done it. So did it anyway.
And that's good information. So we can learn from biblical characters what courage looks like, you know.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's really good. So do you think courage is something people are born with, or is something that they develop over time?
I believe it's developed over time because you learn it with every experience that you go through. So.
Yes, that makes sense. So can you share like a moment in your life when you had to use courage?
Yes. There has been a few times where I preached at my church. And, you know, initially you think about, well, what is everyone going to think about you, or will you mess up? But it took courage. I went ahead and was bold and did it because it was a calling that the Lord wanted me to do.
That's sure true. So true. So again, courage isn't something we suddenly find. It's something we practice, okay? Every courageous life begins with one brave step. So one step at a time. Absolutely. So why does courage matter? Today we're going to talk about why courage is important in life and leadership, because you're a leader. And Nadine is a leader. She also has a business that we'll talk about later. But we are in that leadership mode because God has put us there, you know. Yes. So again, what we do for our courage for leaders, it grows within us. Like you were saying the story that how you have to preach and you had to jump out there, and it requires faith, you know. Does. And then leadership requires courage.
Absolutely.
Okay. Without courage, people often stay stuck in positions because they're afraid or because they're comfortable. So why do you think courage plays such an important role in a personal growth?
Well, That's a good point. I think it plays a great role because you are stepping out of your comfort zone and you're doing something that's uncertain. So it's very important to do that so that you can develop that courage. I think that's central to your personal growth.
Okay, good. What helped you develop courage in your own life?
Well, being a Christian, that's so important. You know, reading the Bible, learning what Jesus died for you for, that really helps. And just knowing God and who you are in Christ, that helps build character.
Yes, that's for sure. So again, courage creates the possibility for change. Without courage, potential remains untrapped. Okay.
True.
I'm dealing with a lot of courageous moods right now. And one of the ones, since I'm currently in the pot, I feel like I'm in the pot. It's kind of like you're in this bucket of clams. You know how the clams try to go up and then one's try to pull you back down. And so we had the conversation on the way here. I feel like I'm on the race car on the arcade, the arcade, and trying to drive, and one's knocking you down, and you move in this direction, and which way do I go? And so it's amazing to be in this position at this present time. So one of the courageous things that I'm facing currently is, because I'm a leader, and we have individuals, 40 individuals that's dependent on working, okay? And my contract is being removed from us. And so me as a leader have to think every day, how do I face these people? How do I encourage people? In today's situation, my clients are now being disturbed. And they come in upset and looking for an answer, looking for Musudeen. Can you give me an answer here in this situation? And it really stuns me because I have to think, pray, and then process, and then give an answer and move. And so the courage that has to be built in from within, it's happened over years, like you were saying. So can you share a moment when you feel like courage helped you step out into something new or uncertain?
A time where, like you said, in the business, every day, just dealing with various other leaders, that are over us. It takes courage to stand up for what you believe in, your values, especially when it seems like people are tearing you down, just holding your own weight and standing your ground. So it kind of happens every day as we go through life. It's just a part of life, you know?
And we say that it's part of life, but then when we have other people's lives that's looking to you, it's a difference. Because if I was only doing my lifey life, it's different than having 40, 50 other people lifey life going on.
That's
you see?
True.
When you said that, I'm thinking, okay, it's life, but it's a different lifey life, And so you have to think, if you are a leader that is authentic, people already know that they can trust you, okay? And so they're looking to you for these great answers, which you don't even have, and you're looking at them and they're looking at you. and that was the situation I had to face recently, having to meet with my employees 2 weeks ago to tell them, hey, you may not have a job, come June the 30th, but be encouraged, So it was really a relief for me because I was holding that whole burden in my hand. But it was interesting. It was solitude to know that these people, they understood where I was coming from and they empathized with me. So it was really a cool exchange to go through. But again, it took courage, and I had to pray up to that moment because I didn't know what I was going to say. I said, Lord, give me the words that I could just speak it out and it will be received. And it was well received. So again, sometimes we are faced with different challenges is more than we can even think or imagine. But who gives us the strength is God. That's
Amen.
who walks us through this thing,
That's so
especially
true.
if you're a believer. You have to know there is a greater good.
Yes.
You know, I can't do it at all. And like I tell people, I'm only being that vessel to move forward. So that is my courage story as I'm going through, but it's a daily struggle. It's a daily step, like we were talking, one step at a time. So again, the moments that require courage often becomes the moments that shape us the most, right?
Yes.
And then growth usually begins where growth comfort ends. So we have to come out of uncomfortability to grow.
Definitely.
Okay? Yes. So Nadine, can you tell me a situation or situations you've had to encounter, and how did you deal with those situations courageously? I'm talking about for somebody else because you're a leader. Okay. How did you deal with that situation courageously to, I say, minimize the situation? Because we have some things we have to bring down to a level that hopefully people can, receive it.
Right. Well, as you were saying, which is so true, we cannot do anything without the Lord. And it made me think of a Bible verse where it says it in John, I believe, where Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. He's the vine and we're the branch.
Yes.
So, I understand totally what you're saying. It's true. We always have to think about other people and why we're doing what we do. That, and then ask God to give us the guidance and the direction and the courage to do it.
Yeah.
So I deal with that. I do deal with it on a daily basis. I have a lot of employees, and I go to God and I say, well, Lord, what is it you are doing in this situation? And what is it that you would like for me to say to this person? Rather than just giving my own opinion, I go to God first, and then He definitely will guide us, and that's what He wants, that dependency. So we're dying to self,
Yes.
and just submitting to the Lord and letting Him have His way.
Yes.
That helps us to deal with other people on a daily basis.
For sure. Again, like we talked, courage looks like honesty, okay? Because you have to be honest with yourself and what's going on in that time period.
Yes.
And also, it looks like patience. We have to have patience to be in that space, okay? And courage also looks like stepping forward, even when unsure.
Yeah.
Courage can appear in everyday decisions, as we talked about. And so, here is another question for you, Nadine. What are some everyday ways people demonstrate courage? Just other people.
I think with their experiences, just stepping out and doing things that they are not certain about, just trying new things, new adventures, being honest, telling the truth, being transparent. Those are some of the things.
That makes sense. So I hope the listeners are catching this, because we're going to recap this at the end. So this is good stuff.
It is.
So do you think small acts of courage can lead to bigger life changes?
Oh, most definitely. You don't really know how you're affecting someone's life, just by doing a small act. It could be something simple as saying hello. Or giving them a hug, or opening the door for them. Small acts definitely lead to bigger blessings. When we just take one step, and then God will do the rest.
Right.
So, yeah.
As you're saying that, I spin back to my story today. The young lady that came to me, she is part of the group that's been shifted out, to another organization or however. And she was confronted yesterday with this information. But this young lady was never very vocal when we first received her as a client. And I'm sitting here thinking how courage, and because we have courageous acts, it transfers. I'm sitting here thinking that when you're saying this, because this young lady was able to verbalize everything she did not like about the situation that was presented to her yesterday. Have you ever thought about that? Where because you are courageous, maybe it'll transfer to someone else, and it's like a domino effect.
Yeah, I could see how that would definitely happen.
Yeah.
Because they will look at you and say, well, if she did it and got through with it and came out all right, then maybe I can do it too,
I like that. Yeah. that was pretty good.
Sometimes it just takes that one person to do it, and then everyone else feels like they can do it as well.
Well, yeah. That's powerful stuff. So that's our hope in the show today, really. It just kind of hit me just now as I was speaking that out. So again, brave lives are built one step at a time. We're going to talk about how we can transition this to building courage over time, okay? So again, it's not a one and done. This is an everyday lifestyle, okay? But once you get to doing one thing at a time, it gets a little more better. I'm not saying easy. I think it gets better. So courage grows through practice. And again, it's like being a track runner, or you want to run track. And you've never ran before, and you run that first lap, and you say, oh man, that was hard. But you keep practicing every day. It gets better. And so that's the same as courage. And it also has confidence, okay? Often follows action. And like I said, this young lady was very confident to talk about what she didn't like was going on in her life right now. It's stressing her out, you know. And I think I'm amazed at what's coming out of her mouth, because this is not the individual that was very vocal, okay? And again, it builds strength, courage. I mean, it brings faith. You have to have faith to have courage, I believe.
I do too, you know. Definitely.
Yeah. So what habits or practices do you think, Nadine, help people become more courageous?
Praying, that's something I do often. And praying is just talking to God. And, reading your word, studying the Bible, because the Bible has the answers to everything. You know, Jesus is the answer. And then putting those into practice. That's what's important. You know, it's one thing to know something, but if you don't do it, then it doesn't work out, you know.
That makes sense.
So obedience and having that faith that you can do it. Coaxing yourself, giving yourself positive feedback. That's so important. Yeah, and watching what words you're saying out of your mouth, because
that's a good one.
The Bible says there's life and death and life in the power of the tongue. So, and out of the same mouth comes curses and blessings. So we need to really watch what we're saying and making sure that we're not putting ourselves down or others, and just giving positive encouragement.
And that makes sense, because in order for us to get better and get courageous, you have to look within too.
Yes,
I believe. And then can, once you look within and see how you can navigate your own, I say feelings. I told you I was working on that, my emotions, you know, and then I can compact it, and then I'm able to present it better. I think. Yes. So that's something I'm working on, you guys.
Self-examination.
I do the self-examination. It's the emotional regulation. You know, like this morning, I was very emotional because of the situation that's happening. But that is my struggle right now. Hold me accountable. Hopefully, it will get better. So again, confidence is often the result of repeated courage. So for today, the listeners, we want you to know this is real. This stuff is this is really real conversations, and we want you to stay encouraged. So we're gonna invite you to, in your own lives, to stop right now, figure out where you are, and what do you need to take that first step for your courage walk. I call it a courage walk. Okay.
Yes.
So, where, Nadine, this question is for you again. Where in your life might courage be required right now? I know you're going through some things. So.
In my life, in my business, courage is required, you know, to stand my ground and to, again, stay true to myself and do the work that is necessary. That takes boldness, that takes bravery.
And for the listeners, I want you to reflect on that question too. What do you have to do right now that requires courageous acts? Okay.
And absolutely having faith in God.
Mm-hmm.
Because it goes back to what we were talking about initially.
Yeah.
Without him, we could do nothing, you know. So it's faith in God. Faith without works is dead. So we need to just trust God and then have peace about it and go forward with it.
For sure.
We believe it came from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ones that believe in God, start there first. That's
Amen.
that's our advice. Okay.
For sure.
And then, not to say it gets easier, but you do have a companion, which is Jesus, walking alongside you.
Yeah.
And it does get better, by the way. So I want you to reflect this week, what action that you have been putting away because of fear or just because of shame or whatever, that you need to step forward and start being courageous. I'm gonna challenge them to do that this week. And so again, courage is not reserved for extraordinary moments. Okay, this is an ongoing thing. It's built and through everyday decisions to move forward with faith. Okay.
Yes.
So for our guests again today, if you're listening and you feel afraid, I want you to take your next step. What does encouragement look like to you? And we're giving you encouragement to continue to walk out what you need to do.
Yes.
Our next episode, Nadine, this is going to be amazing next week.
All right.
It's going to be trusting God when you don't understand. Okay,
That's
just
a
a little
good one.
tease.
That's
Yeah,
a good
just a little
one.
tease. So again, a conversation about how faith grows during the season where clarity is missed. Again, today we have really given value to our listeners, and Nadine has given you guys steps to take in terms of walking one step at a time, practicing each and every day our courageous move. I call it a courageous move. And so this is what you have to do. You need to play this podcast back over if you want to get some more nuggets.
Yes.
And then you need to move. Do not be afraid to move ahead.
That's good.
And again, if you've missed some of our other podcasts, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Go back and listen to some of these. And we so appreciate you guys listening and being a part of our community. And again, we thank Nadine for being here today. That she's giving you guys value. We can continue to live courageously.
Yes.
And we're going to walk by faith. God bless.
Thank you, Miss
Thank
Nadine.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.